Joining us is Geoff Duncan, former Republican Lieutenant Governor, now Democrat running for Governor of Georgia. Thank you so much, Mr. Duncan, for being here.
Glad to be here.
So I want to start off by just asking you, are you a Democrat because your values have changed or because the Georgia GOP no longer wanted you in the party?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'm a Democrat, proud Democrat, because my values have changed. I think I wake up every day as a proud Democrat because loving my neighbor is easier now. As a Republican, I couldn't love my neighbor if they didn't look like me, act like me, love like me, vote like me. It was a limiting factor, and I wake up now as a proud Democrat without those limitations. And certainly, the solutions, I believe, rest in the Democratic Party at this point around healthcare, around education, around public safety, around foreign policy. So I am a proud Democrat.
We're hearing a lot of affordability. As you know, session just started this week in Georgia, and it seems like Republicans and Democrats both want this affordability issue to be resolved. They want to go about it different ways. What's your policy in place if you were able to get this seat when it comes to affordability?
Yeah, the only people that don't really seem to get the fact that Americans are worried about affordability is Donald Trump and the MAGA crowd. It doesn't feel like they understand how real this is for folks. Whether they're living check to check or own a business, the affordability crisis is hitting home in every household in the state. And one of the areas of opportunity for me is I want to use $1.7 billion of the $17 billion rainy day fund, called a Jumpstart Fund, and reach into those families and those lives that need that one jumpstart to get back to work with affordable child care costs by better funding the CAPS program, by better funding the TANF program to be able to help those around the vicious cycle of poverty with transportation costs, with power costs, energy bills, be able to help soften some of those areas, but also to expand Medicaid. So many folks are waking up in a healthcare crisis. Almost everybody listening here is in the midst of a healthcare crisis. And so looking for opportunities to expand that. But we have to make real moves. The federal government is not on our side. They're not really interested in seeing people thrive in Georgia. And so we as a state government have to switch our focus away from just a select few to a majority of Georgians.
So are you saying that the power should really lie within the states because the federal government isn't doing what they need to do?
Well, if you're a kid that is used to getting a free and reduced lunch and no longer because Donald Trump decided to give tax breaks to billionaires and the SNAP program's been cut, then yes, we would reach in with the state government's funds and try to help reach those people where they're at. We have to do more as a state, unfortunately. The majority of our tax dollars go to the federal government, but Donald Trump has decided to declare war on the American people unless they waive their allegiance to him. And for me, that's the wrong way to go about it.
I mean, you were one of the first when you were a Republican to stand up to the president amid that January 6th insurrection that we saw. I want to ask you about the recent candidate forum that you spoke at in Savannah. You noted, and you also mentioned here, that the next governor would need to expand Medicaid and work with the General Assembly to do it. The General Assembly obviously dominated by Republicans that have not really been on board with the idea of expanding Medicaid. How would you do that?
Well, two things. One is if Geoff Duncan wins this race for governor, there'll be a number of seats, legislative seats, that flip. And so instead of seeing 100 Republicans and 80 Democrats in the state house, you'll see a much tighter majority start to soften up. So everything will be negotiable. I think a majority of Republicans know what the right thing to do is. I think they understand the fiscal effects of expanding Medicaid are actually helpful for Georgia. And also just doing the right thing of expanding Medicaid so folks don't have to show up to the hospital and decide whether or not they stay in the car and treat their own medical illnesses or go into the hospital and bankrupt themselves and their family. And so I think by presenting it that way, a majority of Republicans will agree. And we'll be able to pass common sense healthcare legislation, but also things like common sense gun legislation. I think a majority of Republicans know what the right thing to do is. They agree with 90% of Americans and Georgians that want universal background checks, red flag laws, and in-home safe storage laws. They just don't have the air cover, in their opinion, to do it. And so as governor, if they want to blame me for it, for doing the right thing, go ahead and blame me. But I think showing up to work every day, just looking for the right thing to do, is what most Georgians want us to do, irregardless of what party they are.
Because you're saying it's not a red thing or a blue thing, it's a money thing.
We've turned campaigns into ours versus D, shirts versus skins, tribalism. But the reality is most Georgians, when they're scared about paying for their next rent bill or can't afford groceries or don't know where they're going to get health care or are being attacked by ICE agents, most folks realize that they don't care if it's an R or D. They just want adults in the room to make solutions and to figure out their problems. And that's certainly what I've presented throughout my career in politics.
Now, some Republicans say, hey, let's do that. Let's give Georgians more money by eliminating the state income tax. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think it's a disingenuous argument because they fail to read the second page of their speech. If you eliminate Georgia's state income tax, you have to increase sales tax to 12 to 15%, which would be the largest tax increase in the history of the universe. Overnight, and so it's disingenuous to say that. It's all political fodder.
Is there a way to do it without having to increase the sales tax?
I certainly have never seen anybody present that to me. $17 billion out of our $37 billion budget comes from income tax. So I'm not certain of a way to reinvent 50% income tax. Other states around us do different things. Florida doesn't have an income tax, but they have an astronomically high sales tax, and they generate a majority of their revenue through tolls and through tourism. Other states have other ideas. Look, I do think we can have a more efficient and more effective state government, but by just throwing out campaign fodder to cut the income or to eliminate the income tax.
So you say it's just talk?
Oh, it's all bluster. It's all bluster. I would venture to guess that if they actually pass eliminating the income tax, and it goes into law and Governor Kemp signs it, I would imagine our credit rating as a state would plummet overnight and create junk bond status immediately, which I can't imagine anybody in state government would want that to happen.
Can I ask you about voting? And when it comes to, when in your role as a Republican lieutenant governor, there was some voting legislation passed that not everybody was behind. Why should Black voters trust you after watching Republican leadership, including you, they would say restrict some voting access? Republicans would not say that access was restricted, but Black voters and some Democrats felt like their access was restricted after 2020.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, in 2020, I fought hard for all of those millions of votes that were for Joe Biden that Donald Trump was trying to steal. I mean, that's really what the attempt was, to invalidate millions of votes for Joe Biden. I stood up because it was the right thing to do. Donald Trump was trying to lie, cheat, and steal to sway the election. And I stood up not only when he wanted to have fake electors, but when he wanted to try to call us back into a special session. So I stood up strong for those votes. It's interesting, as a whipsaw, the next legislative session, Donald Trump's manifesto showed up on the Senate floor with all these wish lists of all these things about wanting to limit voting and basically trying to prove his thesis that the election was stolen through various means and mechanisms. I put the Senate in recess and walked out of the chamber. As lieutenant governor, as the president of the Senate, you don't get to vote yes or no, and you don't get to make all the rules. I knew of only one way to protest that manifesto of falsehoods, was to walk off the floor and to let the Senate come back together, reconvene under their own with the president pro tem. As governor, we'll continue to look for ways to expand voting rights. We'll continue to look for ways and opportunities to get the most number of folks to show up to vote legally, of course. Everybody wants that, but we should not be constricting the number of people that vote. We should be opening up that opportunity, because to me that represents the most amount of people you can and gives you the best opportunity to elect the best leaders. And
I hear you saying that now, and you have repeated this on the campaign trail, but the reality of the fact is that your past has contributed to some of the realities of today, that some people say, hey man, you did this, and now you're just cleaning up your mess. What's your response to that? Yeah,
there's a couple of issues I didn't get right, for sure. I mean, I spoke about guns a moment ago. The NRA does not have anybody's best interest at heart. As a young legislator from Forsyth County, I was under the guise that they did, and they don't. I agree in passing common sense gun legislation. I agree that expanding Medicaid, I've literally explored every possible healthcare avenue, and the only way that we can fix our healthcare system is through Medicaid expansion. And third, and most importantly, is the abortion issue. I didn't get it right to think as president of the Senate that a room full of legislators knew more than millions of women, and they don't. When I started to hear those very difficult medical scenarios, difficult personal situations, and some conversations with Kamala Harris about the inability for somebody to push their own opinions on other people, I realized that as governor, day one, I'll sign an executive order that clarifies doctors can practice medicine without fear of prosecution. And secondly, I'll introduce legislation through my floor leaders to repeal the 6-week ban, because it's the right thing to do. Abortion is such a complicated personal issue that we should never think that a two-dimensional piece of paper, a law, would be able to fit those nooks and crannies of somebody's difficult decisions. Women should make that with themselves, with their family, with their doctors, and with their faith.
Thank you for your answer. What does your campaign offer that campaign, I want to say Ms. Keisha Lance Bottoms, some see her as another front runner in this race, or I don't know if there's a clear front runner, but they see her as very formidable, and other Democratic candidates that are hoping to get this seat. How does your campaign differ from them?
Yeah, I think it's the electability issue. It's been nearly 30 years since a Democrat has been sworn in as governor. Roy Barnes in 1998 is the last governor to get sworn in that was a Democrat. And there's lots of complicated reasons why that might be the case, but the reality is you have to get more than the base to win the governorship in Georgia. And I'm the only one in this race in the Democratic primary that's building a big enough coalition to not just win a primary, but to win the general election for the first time in nearly 30 years.
So you mean reaching people outside of Atlanta?
Democrats, well, across party lines, Democrats, independents, and this growing batch of disgusted Republicans opening up the tent and saying, come on, join us on this journey. Come vote for us, not just Geoff Duncan at the top of the ticket as a Democratic governor nominee, but also for elected officials up and down the ballot as Democrats. We should be opening this tent. Every time Donald Trump opens his mouth, our tent is getting bigger. Not only as Democrats, but specifically Geoff Duncan's campaign. Everywhere I go, every community I go into, the urban communities, the rural communities, the black communities, the Asian communities, the business communities, folks are recognizing that I give us the best shot to win this election and to beat Burt Jones. I mean, at the end of the day, Burt Jones is going to be the Republican nominee because Donald Trump said so. And his dad gave him $10 million of meal money to go play games running for governor. So the reality is, Burt Jones is Donald Trump. They're the same person. And so what does Georgians want to do? Do they want to run a primary that only elects somebody, only nominates somebody but doesn't elect them in the general? Or do they want to nominate somebody that can beat Burt Jones? I certainly think I'm the best person to do that.
If somebody is watching right now, they haven't heard about your policy. They've heard about, all the other stuff, you going from Democrat to, from Republican to Democrat. Give me your top policy that Georgia voters might, recognize, say, okay, maybe this is my guy.
Yeah, I think the simple message of affordability, healthcare, and Donald Trump is the area of focus on the campaign trail. But I think the most attractive trait to Geoff Duncan throughout my 10-year career, even formerly when I was a Republican, is that I'm just an honest umpire. I show up to work every day to put the honest facts on the table. I make good decisions. I work with folks around me, both sides of the aisle, to try to build consensus. And so I think that's what we need more now than ever. When I ran for lieutenant governor in 2018, we talk about all these issues that are on the campaign trail, but none of us talked about how well we would be in a pandemic to govern, how well we would be in civil unrest, how good we would manage a budget that had to lose 10% overnight. So I think we have to elect good decision makers, honest umpires, and that's certainly what I represent myself as. That's what my resume shows. I've been not only in the public sector, but also in the private sector.
And does being a good decision maker, does that mean potentially, reaching across the aisle and listening to people that you might not agree with when it comes to policy?
Yeah, I think that's important to do. I think at the end of the day, if you're being an honest umpire, you recognize where folks are more alike than they are unalike or disalike. The reality is building consensus across party lines. I did that certainly with Democrats. It would be nothing unusual to see me sitting in a Democratic caucus meeting as a Republican lieutenant governor, yielding ideas from them, improving legislation, looking for opportunities to be better. And certainly, if Republicans want to come up with good ideas when I'm a Democratic governor, certainly come on in the office. Let's work together to solve people's problems. Because I think it's interesting, to think about in campaign cycles. You show up to work every day trying to just win a certain number of votes in your crowd, in your tribe. But the reality is, when you get elected to these offices, you govern for all. You set policies for people who don't even vote for you, and that's something that you have to take seriously.
And I feel like a lot of, at least people who I speak with on the ground, they are noticing this increased partisan nature, this East Coast versus West Coast, us versus them. If you cross over, you're a traitor. How do you, if you win this race, how do you plan to combat that narrative and bring people together?
I think you got to start by leading by example. I mean, if the governor of the state of Georgia is taking meetings with all types of groups, with trying to sit down in bipartisan ways to build consensus. I mean, if a governor wants to pull pins and throw grenades at the other team just because it helps their politics, campaign politics, then that's going to be the tempo that they set. That's not how I'm wired. I want to build consensus. I want to work with legislators in the Senate and the House. I want to work with other governors around the country. I think we have an interesting, unique opportunity here in Georgia. The rest of the country's watching what we're doing in this 26th election. They want the permission to go do the right thing too. They've seen Georgia got the election right. It was uncomfortable, it was messy. It certainly continues to push back Donald Trump and his cronies. But I think they're watching to see if we can elect common sense decision makers, right? Folks that really are wired to go to work to solve problems. We've gotten contributions from all 50 states. All 50 states have contributed to our campaign. These are all small dollar donations. These are folks that are watching it play out on their evening news, that want to see somebody get elected that isn't going to call names. They're going to solve problems.
Thank you. Being mindful of the time here, I do want to just get in one question on immigration. We are seeing some unrest across the country after the shooting in Minneapolis by an ICE officer. Immigration has been a strong point for the Trump administration. We are seeing this in Georgia communities. A lot of people that support Donald Trump and Republicans are on board with this, saying that if you did not come to the country legally, you should not be here. What is your stance on that, and will you do you commit to combating what we are seeing from the Trump administration as a Democrat, or do you agree with what is happening right now?
No, how can you agree? If you have a heart and a brain, how can you agree with what Donald Trump's doing and Kristi Noem and this whole ICE raid situation? It's inhumane, it's unjustified. And we watched it play out in Minneapolis. I mean, it's just unbelievable to think a mother of 3 was shot to death for a 3-second civil disagreement that was confusing on all angles, on all videos, on all accounts. Look, as governor of the state, Donald Trump will not tell me to use our state resources to work with those ICE agents doing what they're doing. We've got to continue to build a narrative that lowers the temperature. Donald Trump's policies are not immigration policies. They're all about fear and intimidation. There's no reason why folks are coming out masked, unmarked, and intimidating folks, tracking them down on cars. I mean, we see the videos play out every day, all day.
So a federal agent showed up in Georgia. You're governor. What's your move?
It's not to use any state resources to work alongside those folks. I mean, I think at the end of the day, as governor, I will make those decisions not to amplify fear and intimidation. If we need alongside federal, disaster relief or situational control, we need those state assets, but not certainly to support what Kristi Noem wants, a 5-second soundbite on her Twitter feed just to look good.
Last question to you, open note to the voters, just your last words to those who might be watching this interview.
Yeah, look, this election, like everyone always says, is ultra important, but this one really is different. This is going to pick the tone and tempo of the state of Georgia for the foreseeable future. Donald Trump is directly on the ballot. If you like Donald Trump, if you want the state of Georgia to look and smell like Donald Trump, then vote for a Republican. Vote for the continuation of the fear and intimidation that's playing out. But if you want to get Georgia to be a leader in this country, that puts good ideas on the table, that makes ideas even better, you want somebody who's going to lead by example, then vote for Geoff Duncan. Our website's duncanforgeorgia.com.
Mr. Duncan, thank you so much for coming to the studio. We truly appreciate it. Hoping to check in with you again ahead of the primary.
Thank you for the opportunity.